Good morning, everybody, and welcome to our third clinic, Fit for Business COVID-19 clinics. I hope everybody's well today. Today's topic is activity areas consideration for assessing pre-opening and post-opening facilities. Just a little bit about Right Directions. I think most of you will know who we are now, but there's a few slides about who we are and who we work with. Today's clinic is again hosted by myself, Caroline Constantine, MD of Right Directions, Ian Warren, Head of Health and Safety, and today we will be presenting as well Kate Towner, Head of Learn to Swim from Swim England. And we also have Jo Talbot, the CEO of IQL, on the call today. She won't be presenting today, but is here to offer some guidance if there's any questions related to today's topic. Jo will be back next week when we're looking at staffing and training, and she'll be presenting next week and giving us some good advice around staff training and what we may need to do. Today's aim again is to stimulate thoughts and a discussion on how we might be able to enable our customers to partake in activities safely. This has proved to be the hardest presentation so far, and one thing we need to say to you all, this is just guidance from us and advice, sensible advice. What we are seeing is a lot of the NGBs are now starting release their own guidance, and one of our suggestions to you is make sure that you get hold of that guidance and read that in conjunction with what we're doing. We are intending to open another page on our website which will have all our information about COVID-19 and the information we've given out, but we will also be endeavouring to collate all the NGB guidance and put links on the website so that you will be able to easily find that. So what I will do now is pass over to Caroline Constantine, who will start the clinic. Please enjoy, please ask questions, and as always, we will be sending out the presentation later on today.
Welcome everybody. If we've got any golf course owners, managers, staff out there, fantastic news. Great to get people out. Interestingly, we've already heard different guidances being, different rules are being told to users of golf courses already. Somebody was on the BBC News this morning saying they were hand sanitising at every single hole, etc., etc., etc. And then another golf course isn't. So today is all about just getting our heads around our own activities and going back to what we said before of making sure that our customers are feeling safe and want to come in the buildings. Quick recap on the last two we've done is business continuity plan, make sure it's up to date. Everything is about risk assessing now. Make sure you've got a response plan, opening checklist of who's going to do what and when. And obviously we need to start risk assessing. On the last session, we did risk assessments on getting in and around the building. Today, it's about what we actually do when people are doing their activities on the day. So we're going to move on. Next slide. Sorry, backwards. I'm left-handed. I keep doing it backwards. Sorry. Okay, 4 S's, and we will be using these with frontline staff training, and we suggest you do too. Spacing, so social distancing is the biggest and the safest way to stop people catching the virus. Sanitising, i.e. keeping things clean and hygienic. Signage, what we're putting up where to tell people the rules and the guidance, and we've got plenty of staff smiling and supervising the activities. So the S is supervision, smiling and staff. 4th S. This is what we're going to cover today. We're going to cover general considerations for risk assessing activities, activities where social distancing can be easy to manage, activities that are possible with adaptations, and activities that may be difficult to keep social distancing. And then we're going to hand over to Katie to present from Swim England. We've thought long and hard about how we do this, and it's a can of worms, and we're not going to know what the picture's going to be like when we open. So things might change. If you think back, if leisure centres do open in 6 weeks' time, if we think back 6 weeks, how different it was then. So we can be rest assured that what we say today might not necessarily be the same in 6 weeks' time. But this is what we're going with. And we'll go, first of all, for activities where social distancing can be easily managed. No, we're not going to go through general stuff first, sorry. So every activity, if we can write a list of what all those activities are, and what we're suggesting is that you don't just write down swimming lessons. So, for example, swimming lessons, you've got ducklings and mums with babes in the pool up to your level 10 and your water polo and rookie lifeguarding, etc. So please make sure that we look at every category within the activity that you're offering. So gymnastics for beginners and little ones is going to be very different from your gymnastic classes where they're going to potentially be moving on to clubs. So these are the areas that we'd like you to consider when you're looking at those activities. Equipment. Is it zoned off? Have you got floor markings? Who puts equipment out? Are customers getting their own equipment out? Are you sharing equipment? We're suggesting that there should be no direct sharing of equipment that can easily harbour germs, especially things like boxing gloves in boxer size. And is it possible for customers to bring in their own equipment? Somebody suggested that maybe we could sell swimming bags at cost price with floats and etc. in them for the kids. But what we must do is make sure that we're not stopping them from accessing the facilities because we're pricing them out of the market. So then we move on to sanitising. Do we need sanitising stations at which points? What's our cleaning policy before and after each activity, or potentially in the middle of the activity? Do we need to increase our staffing numbers? What space capacity do we need? How do we keep customers and staff socially distancing? What's the room quality? What's the size, etc.? Who's using it? What clubs and external users might be connected to that activity? What advice we've got from outside? How are we booking people? Can we book all activities online and stagger sessions? What information are we giving the customers on the rules and arrangements when they come in and beforehand on the websites? And what signage and advice are we offering? So those we thought were very good starters for looking at our control measures for activities. Here we go. This is the easy slide. This is the one that we didn't.
You want me to do it, Caroline?
Sorry, I'm handing over to Ian. I apologise. I'm doing my honour roll. Sorry, over to Ian.
Hi, everybody. If I could just perhaps take us back to the very beginning of what we're trying to do here, and that's to assess the risks of the transfer of this virus and work out the control measures that are necessary. As Caroline said, we're looking through the prism of today. The prism of 6 weeks ago was a lot different, and the prism in 6 weeks' time, when we're nearer to it, might be different again. But I think we need to plan for how we get things working today. All things are possible. It depends on how much we work towards making that possible and how economic that is at the end of the day. The other thing I would just remind her, I'll put the health and safety caveat on the top of this. COVID-19 is reportable under RIDDOR, and if we don't get this right, we do risk external scrutiny. But more importantly, it will be something that is commented on by all of our customers. Those centres that get this right and give customers confidence will be the ones that succeed and get back more quickly. Those who do not will lose out. We only have to look at our own experiences of visiting supermarkets and other venues to know what the good and the bad is, and I'm sure in the next few weeks, as the non-essential shops begin to open, we'll also see what the ugly is. So we need to be looking ourselves and learning from it of how we work towards setting up sensible, proportionate control measures to make sure that we can provide a confident environment for our customers and staff to return to. So So as Caroline said, we're looking at this in 3 categories, and we're asking you perhaps to list all your activities into these 3 categories as a way of looking at the control measures and making things much easier for you to try and get back into operation. Clearly the core issues that we're trying to achieve is social distancing, making sure people or surfaces remain clean, equipment is cleaned where appropriate, and you put supervision where it's necessary to ensure those control measures are put into place. So examples of those that we think could be easy. Now there could be a whole load more to these and you might add to them. Badminton with family members, tennis with family members could easily be achieved. They're one household. There's no reason why they could not be able to take part in activities almost straight away, although that yet hasn't been allowed by the government. But hopefully past the 4th of July, if things continue to go well and that R rate comes down, we might be back into doing that. And it might be wider than that, but let's work on that for the time being. Outdoor classes and activities, they're going to be far less risk than indoors. And could be looked at in a wider context, particularly with the summer. Team sports, training exercises where no contact is involved, personal training, cricket nets, golf, as Caroline said, is already back and open, although some sites are running to different rules. We do have NGBs already issuing guidance. I know the Golf Association has already issued amended rules, but it's up to each facility to work out how they are implementing those. Water sports, swimming outdoors in lakes and seas, we'll pass over that one, whether that was a good idea to say that. And I don't think any of us have got that type of environment at the moment. Athletics, table tennis, bowls, and there could be a list of others. If you think about them, please put them up on the chat line if you want to discuss those and add them into this list. But there's a whole range of activities that we perceive could be quite easily brought back in, on which in your risk controls you can list and point out the minimum levels of adaptation that you might need. Next slide, please. Next slide. These are the ones where we might need to consider possible adaptations, and these are for all activities as well, and will include a load more considerations. And it may well be that if capacity within your facilities are a problem, you might have to think about all sessions becoming bookable in one way or another to avoid queues and then congestion within those activities. And that could be staggered. We don't want a whole group of people going into the change rooms at one time for a session in the swimming pool and all coming out again at the same time. If you stagger them through, you'll reduce the densities, and your risk assessments might be able to show what is possible rather than see it as a great block. Clearly, if we decrease occupancy numbers, we increase the ability to create social spacing, increase supervision to make sure that's adhered to, less movement, so activities such as an exercise or an exercise session where people stay at the same station could well be better than moving them around using more equipment. And those activities that have got no personal contact are going to be a lot easier. Consideration might be given to PPE and masks, but we do have to keep an eye on what the guidance is on that and how effective they really are. Social distancing and cleanliness is probably the most important. That comes to the bottom. Social distancing, examples of these activities will include the gym, where you can maybe take out every other piece of equipment to keep people apart, classes, perhaps decreasing occupancy levels, climbing walls, swimming lanes, maybe widening swimming lanes, and I'm sure Swim England in their presentation might talk about some of these areas. Circuit training, again, not moving around. Adapted rules for some of the clubs, football, basketball could be turned into more like tag sessions so that people don't get too close or they have to pass when you get within a certain distance. Walking football particularly. Trampoline parks could easily be one of those with some minor adaptations that are going to be capable of being thought through how the controls can be implemented. And clearly single use or playing with family members in squash courts. Play schemes where there's enhanced supervision and reduced numbers could potentially be able to be offered during summer periods, but they're the control measures you need to think through relevant to your facilities and how much supervision you're going to be able to have. And again, there could be a whole list of other things we haven't thought about, but please do put them up on the chat if you want to ask questions about those other activities. So Jill, if we could go to the next slide. Right, okay, there we are. And these are the ones where we think they might be more difficult to achieve social distancing. There might be other views on this, and some people might not see them as a problem, but these are the ones we've listed, some of which are pretty obvious will create more problems, and which we need to be looking to the NGB guidance as they come through to see how they're going to work. But all things are possible. It just depends on how effective or sustainable they are. Swimming lessons, gymnastic lessons, trampoline lessons, particularly where human contact might be necessary, are going to be more difficult to think through some of the control measures. But as I've said, there should be ways around lots of these. And again, some of those we might talk about later. Creche is an obvious one, and I think we'll have to look to early years guidance on how that might be capable of being offered. Children's parties, so long as social distance is maintained and activities where children aren't too close together might be possible. Soft play structures, you've got to think how you cleanse, how you keep children apart in those facilities, and could be more challenging to think through. But again, through your own risk assessment, you might be able to come up with ways some of these might be capable, and in 6 weeks' time the guidance may well have changed through the prism of time and how guidance is being issued out. Obstacle courses, tag courses, again, you need to think through how they might operate, and I think the key one here probably is distancing and keeping the customers clean so that they're not passing on as they work through these activity areas might be as effective as thinking about having to clean every little object in between every little use. But they're things you need to think about. Beauty treatments are an obvious one, could be more difficult, depends on how and what treatments and therapies are being offered. Contact sports such as martial arts, netball, etc. I know netball is not meant to be contact. We need to look to the governing bodies as the guidance comes out from those individual people. Health suites and spas, depends on how big your health suite is. If it's large, you might well be able to get a few people in there and distance them, but if they're small, then clearly you're going to need to restrict numbers, and it's whether the economics of it allow you to open. And GP referral and cardio phase 4, we might need to be looking at more clinical settings as to how you might be able to get those to work, but they're ones that are going to need more control measures in place to enable you to do it. We mustn't forget within all this who we're trying to serve, and there will be customers with special educational needs or disabilities and very young children who are still going to want to come in. And we'll need to think through how perhaps young children who don't understand the new norm are going to be managed so that they don't end up causing problems for themselves and other people around them, and how we're going to look at groups of carers and people with disabilities who might need assistance in the water. It might well be possible, and I'd like to think that we think through control measures positively to see how it can rather than cannot be enabled. But there's some of the challenges I'm sure we're going to be facing. Okay, again, I'm sure if there are any others you want to throw up on the chat line, I will hand over now to Katie from Swim England.
Thanks, Ian. I hope everyone can hear me okay. I did have some slight internet issues where I kept dropping out earlier on, so please do put in the chat box if you can't. My name's Katie Towner. I'm the head of Learn to Swim for Swim England, and I just wanted to say thank you to Adaptations for inviting us to this call, because I think it's great that across the industry that we are showing collaboration and support to all of the sectors and ensuring that there's a consistency of message that is going out to our partners and to the industry. So I'm really, really grateful for that. Caroline, can I have the next slide, please? Just a little bit of a disclaimer, as Ian and Caroline mentioned, this is all based on current day guidance, what we have available to us. We don't know anything that you guys don't already know, but what we want to say is that anything that you do consider, always take into consideration those risk assessments of how you are going to implement any of these changes that are going to take place. Again, Swim England don't own or operate any of your facilities. We are very much here, like Right Directions, to point you in the right direction, excuse the pun, and obviously get you prepared for when we are opening. So we've been, like you guys, thinking about planning ahead. And I think, you know, some of this information that you see, or some of the ideas that you might have, as Ian has already said on the call, might not be what it looks like in 6 weeks. But I think if you've got some good ideas on how you could get back up and running, it will only mean that you will be tweaking some of these changes rather than writing them from scratch. So although it might not be set in stone, actually it gives us a good starting point to get our industries up and running again. If I could have the next slide, please, Caroline. So the work to date that the Swim England have been working on, obviously across the board, Swim England's facilities team were asked to contribute to the UK active guidance, and I'm sure most of you have seen that. It was overarching guidance, and we didn't have very long to contribute to it before it went out to the wider sector, but some of those key principles in there are what we are working towards in terms of our more specific guidance. We've created a number of consultee groups, which include a number of our key stakeholders from across the sector, so not only operators but also other organisations, including the other NGBs for swimming, so Swim Wales, Swim Ireland, Scottish Swimming, RLSS, obviously Joe's on the call today, Community Leisure UK, and this is just again to ensure that every message that you guys receive is consistent, and that you know that we are all working in collaboration to ensure that what you get is the right message at the right time. Next slide, please. So these are just, this is taken from the UK Active Guidance for those of you that haven't seen it, but you can find it on their website, and this was specific to the swimming pool environment. So these are the things that Swim England are working towards to start writing some more specific guidance for you guys to follow. On here, obviously, we've got some evidence to suggest that chlorine being in the pool is absolutely fine, but as Ian has highlighted, people have got to get to and from the pool, and there's lots of touch points in those areas. Social distancing within the pool, obviously that maximum bather load is what you have anyway, but when people start to move around and the types of activities that you bring back into those pools first off, you're going to need to consider really carefully. Would it be your GP referral? Will it be your learn to swim lessons? Now I know that there's been a few questions around learn to swim. I understand for most of you it is probably one of the biggest income generators. But depending on what happens with schools and those social distancing measures moving forward, it might be the more difficult one to get back into the pools early on. You might not be thinking about your parent and child classes. You might be thinking about your more elite level moving forward, where those children understand social distancing and where you have a bit more pool space to move and you're not reliant on activities. Thinking about your pinch points, in some of the guidance it suggested that there was a gap between lessons, but actually your pinch points are going to be in those changing rooms. So dependent on your facility, we know that there's things like village change, there's open changing facilities. Can you do an in and out? Is there a dry side where people come through and get changed on a dry side, and can they come back out wet? So you've got some time in between to clean those changing rooms down. Also, your parent information. We've spoken about obviously limiting the number of people within the facility, but how are you going to communicate to those parents and carers that are coming in and supervising their children through to the activities? Again, if they are the younger ones, their parents are going to need to get them changed. So we've suggested that there would be only one parent or carer per child. Where possible, we're going to start creating guidance to parents about understanding how their children put their goggles on, their hats on. So again, the teacher doesn't have to be interacting on that level with the children and can remove themselves onto the pool side. So again, we'll be looking at guidance and training specifically with the Institute of Swimming and the RLSS about teachers teaching from the pool deck and how that would happen with those lower ability classes and how that can safely happen. Equipment we've spoken about, and then considerations obviously in the changing room areas we've discussed. More hand sanitizer available, or or soap available for poolside staff. And I think it's really important those areas where those children congregate to wait for their lessons you have a look at those and think about the space that you would require, or any kind of lines and things on the floor. So these are the fundamental principles that we will be working towards to come up with that more specific guidance. So if I can move on to the next slide, Caroline. So how we're going to write that guidance as an NGB is very similar to obviously the work that Right Directions are doing and what you've heard for them already. It is safety first, so it's paramount that we put all of our considerations into the safety. Yes, we could run all of these activities, but is it safe to do so, and in what order are we going to bring them back? Swimming has a multitude, swimming pools have a multitude of uses and the biggest variety of customers as well. It needs to be consistent across all of our activities and stakeholders. I've already described to you the ways in which that we are working to produce this, and it's robust. Anything that we put out there will be developed by experts. It will be scientifically led, and it will obviously be led by the government guidance as well. And it will be ever evolving. So what you see now may not be what you see in 6 weeks. So just make sure that you guys are the most up to date with the industries and your NGBs, not just us as Swim England, but across the piece, because as you move forward, that guidance will change. So sign up to all the newsletters, get onto their social medias and make sure that it is available. Obviously, we are working with Right Directions and they work with a number of NGBs. So again, that is another channel that you can go through. So as we provide that support to the stakeholders, we will make sure that we consult as much as possible with a number of different clubs, swim schools, as long as with operators from local authority to big national providers to private entities as well. So we will get feedback from across the board. So some of you might already be involved with that. Next slide for me, Caroline. So the activity-specific guidance that you will be expected to see coming from Swim England will be broken down into these key areas, but it's not exclusive of these areas. Obviously, there will be some other things that you guys run in your pools that might need to be taken into consideration. But the guidance will be broken down into community activity, so considerations for lane swimming, inflatable sessions, kind of your family sessions, any instructor-led sessions, your aquafit, swim fit or health sessions. Swimming lessons including school swimming. Obviously, swimming being part of the national curriculum. We're having conversations with the Department for Education now on what that would look like. Obviously, if the schools are back, what year groups are going back, and is there a requirement for them to go to the pool? Clubs and talent included all of our disciplines, so water polo, artistic swimming, diving, and inclusive of open water. And also our education setting. So anybody that is delivering any of our qualifications or courses at their centre, our Swim England qualifications team, along with our approved training centres such as the Institute of Swimming, Becky Adlinson Training, will also have guidance and advice on how to safely deliver those courses and to communicate to those parents as well. So I've added a few extra links on there so you guys again can keep up to date with everything that is going on. If anybody's got any questions, as Ian said, put it in the chat box and we will either collate those or organise them in a minute.
Right, I'm unmuted. Thank you ever so much, Katie. We really appreciate your input. Conscious that we've got lots of people on the chat today. We've got well over 200 people and some of you haven't got pools. So please, following what Katie said, obviously there's going to be guidance coming out from all NGBs, but I would imagine there's going to be an awful lot of similarities. So thanks for that, Katie. A couple of other things that have come in, just so you know, there are dance can quite easily go into, where it's non-contact, can quite easily go into the category of easy to manage. And also ice rinks, there's an awful lot of activities that can happen on ice rinks that are easy to manage. So thanks for those people who've sent them in. What's going to happen, again, we'll just let you know, if you do need our help, we're delighted with the amount of people who've contacted us this week for help, either just over the phone or wanting support for us coming in and seeing you and helping out with your site. So thank you very much for everybody who's contacted us. Very quickly, we're going to go on over to you.